It's really about deciding what frequency we want to experience in our reality, and whatever it is that we are holding energetically and pulsing out is what is reflected back to us. So, too often we think that what's happening outside of ourselves is making us feel a particular way, but we're already holding those resonances somewhere within our own energetic field, most often in the subconscious, and we're putting that out energetically. And so we're getting a mirror to see that we're holding the lower energies so that we can make some shifts.
Welcome to New Earth Podcast, where we dive into inspiring stories, profound wisdom, and insights from remarkable individuals who are driving the consciousness shift on our planet. If you're ready to elevate your awareness and well-being, you're in the right place. But before we dive into today's episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Together, we'll continue to explore the ideas and conversations that help you up-level your consciousness. Thank you so much for your support and your comments and for being part of this journey. Hello and welcome back to New Earth Co-Creators. I'm super excited about today's conversation, and honestly, I've been waiting for it for a long time. My guest today is Wendy Kennedy, world-renowned intuitive and channel, best known for her work with the ninth Dimensional Pleiadian Collective, also known as the Ps. Her work brings profound knowledge, light language activations, and practical teachings that help us shift our frequency and let go of fear. So delighted to have you on the podcast today, Wendy. Welcome.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me.
It's a real pleasure, and it's just so important to have these conversations at this time because we're just going through so much change on our planet, and it's more important than ever that we look at maintaining our frequency during these kind of chaotic times. So we'll be chatting about that today, but we're also going to be having a live channeling from the Ps. So do stay tuned because it's going to be a really powerful conversation. So I'd love to start, Wendy, for those of you that don't know your work, how did you come to start channeling the Pleiadian Collective, and how did that evolve, and who are the Pleiadian Collective?
Yes. So back in the mid 90s, I started having visions and I didn't know what the visions really were. And so I started doing some research on that. And along the way, I came across channeling, and I didn't know what it was. I really didn't know anybody who was doing it, but I felt this very strong inner calling that it was something that I was supposed to be doing. And so I sought out some books on the topic, and I started doing some exercises, and I would have very visceral responses, but I couldn't get the words out. And so at the same time, I was doing a lot of work on myself. I was studying meditation, and I would come back to it every now and again. And pretty much over the course of about 9 months, I would pick it up and I'd have the same kind of experience. And one day I knew I was supposed to sit down with pen and paper. And once I did that, I started automatic writing, and it just kind of progressed from there. And I worked with a variety of guides, my own angelic guides, beings from different star systems and different dimensions. And then one day, they told me I needed to put down the pen. I was hearing the words well in advance of writing. And once I did that, that's when the ninth dimensional Pleiadian collective came through. And they were waiting for me to channel verbally because they actually work with tone and sound, which is why my dialect sounds different when I channel. And it's really not any one particular dialect. It certainly has shifted and altered over the years. It's just tones and frequencies that help us to attune our own energetic field. And they are a group of about 2,500 beings of light. They don't have physical form, and they do work with tone and sound. So in addition to getting the information, it's as if you're getting a healing. And rather than incarnate to a planetary body the way that we do, they actually align with the mission of a star. And in their case, it's the central star in the Pleiades system, Alcyone. So their mission, if you will, is to help us to become stewards of the planet. And they're keepers of record, keepers of frequency. And so they're here to remind us of our true divine nature and to help us to understand how we create and manifest.
I love that, what you say about helping us to become stewards of our planet, because I feel like a lot of us can really relate to that at this time. We're really being called to step into that. So, what are some of the ways that we can really kind of maintain our frequency and support this journey that we're all going through at a collective at this time, particularly as star seeds? You know, a lot of the audience would relate to themselves being star seeds or way showers.
It's really about practice and repetition. It's not complicated what we need to do. It's only complicated in the stories we tell ourselves, but the actual practice of it is very simple. And the guides talk about this endlessly. It's really about deciding what frequency we want to experience in our reality. And whatever it is that we are holding energetically and pulsing out is what is reflected back to us. So, too often we think that what's happening outside of ourselves is making us feel a particular way, but we're already holding those resonances somewhere within our own energetic field, most often in the subconscious, and we're putting that out energetically. And so we're getting a mirror to see that we're holding the lower energies so that we can make some shifts. So, really it's about deciding how we want to feel and then checking in throughout the day. Am I in alignment with that? And if not, then we need to stop for a moment and reset and then imagine connecting with that energy again. And, the guides say, the visualization is great. It gives us a point of focus and it gives the mind a place to go. But what really drives it into being is the emotional state. So if we can imagine what it would feel like to be or to experience that thing, that's what really pushes that frequency out. That's what allows us to manifest in a faster way as well.
I mean, that's absolutely incredible. And the way you put it, it sounds very simple, and it is simple. But you mentioned in terms of, it's our stories that get in the way, and we all have our stories. We all have that fear programming. We all have the ancestral imprints, past life imprints that we're bringing through. How do we navigate all this when that starts to show up? If we've chosen that we want to be certain vibrations, for example, peace. And then, for example, in our external world events, in the collective consciousness, there's all these kind of fear events happening. How do we kind of not go into all of that ancestral, perhaps imprinting or collective imprinting at that point?
Yeah, so all of those past life records, all of that ancestral records, all those exist within our energetic field, but they're in a neutral position until we ourselves in this moment are vibrating that frequency. And then those records begin to vibrate as well through the laws of resonance. So when you have those ancestral patterns that are amplifying, it's just a way for us to see what is there, what we can't normally see. So having appreciation for the fact that you're experiencing a challenge is one of the fastest way through the challenge. And one of the ways to appreciate it is to simply acknowledge that it's showing you that there is more light to be had. There's more joy, more expansion. And, we can't really understand the light unless we have something to compare and contrast it to. So the absence of light helps us to understand that full experience. And when we can have appreciation for that, it helps us to move out. Because typically what happens in the process of manifestation is we say, oh, I don't like that thing over there. And we want to make ourselves separate from it. And what happens when we say, I want to be separate from that thing over there is part of source energy. So we're saying, I don't want to be connected to that half of source energy. So we limit the amount of source energy we can flow through our bodies. The universe wants to bring us back to a state of totality, a state of connection, and we're trying to make ourselves separate. We can't ever be disconnected from anything. We can only hold the illusion that we're separate from it. And so the universe is bringing us those reflections, those challenges, if you will, so that we can see that we're holding this illusion, trying to make ourselves separate from something. And we the fastest way through it is when we can see, all right, it's a valid experience. It doesn't mean that I want to continue to align with it, to experience it, but I'm not going to try to push it away. I'm going to
Okay.
put my energy into something else. That's what allows you to move out of the loop with that thing. Because if you say, I don't like that thing, and you hold that judgment in place, the universe is going to continue to give you that mirror so you can see that that judgment is in place so that you can let it go. That's what integration is. And the more you integrate, the higher you go in frequency until you go to a certain point that you cross a dimensional barrier, and that's ascension. And that's what we're all focused on.
I really love that you're integrating and considering the dark aspects that are a part of ourselves and a part of all that is. Now, I've done a lot of training with Taoist training, the kind of yin and the yang, and it's very much about if we look at the emotions, for example, we're never going to get rid of all the anger and all the fear, and it's impossible, because we're emotional beings. So it's about how can we bring those into balance and bring in more of the positive, bringing that in. Would you say that's a similar kind of outlook in that way and what does it really mean to integrate as you're talking about it?
That's completely what the guides talk about. We'll still have duality. We're living in a dualistic universe. The higher you go in dimension, there's still duality, but the polarities aren't quite as extreme. I mean, we're in a very extreme polarity. So, yes, we're still going to have all of those frequencies, all those emotions, but not at the intensity that we may have in our darkest, heaviest times. And the way that the guides describe integration is really the release of judgment. Judgment is what holds something at bay. And then when you stop judging, then you allow it to be part of the whole again. You integrate it into the whole. And so that's really what we're working to do here. Same thing with aversions. Sometimes, or an attachment, we may be attached to a positive outcome, but the reason we're attached to the positive outcome is because we want to avoid the negative. So
Yeah.
it's tricky there, but it's the same thing. If you're attached to something, it's to avoid something else. And so you're going to stay in a loop in the creation process until you learn to let go of that and just know, okay, that's a frequency that would be interesting to kind of explore. And that's very different than I have to have this thing because if I don't, then I'm going to have the other thing. And I don't want that.
It's really interesting, isn't it? That whole attachment thing and kind of having preferences. And, it's very empowering what you're talking about, that idea of stepping out of it, because it's like acknowledging and saying, okay, I'm experiencing fear right now. I can see that, but I don't choose to continue with this. So it's really, it's interesting because it brings up for me the question about control, because ultimately we don't ever really have control. Like part of surrendering to source is relinquishing that control, but is that the level that we can have some control, that level of choosing, would you say?
Yeah, that's what they say. The only level of control we have is how we choose to respond, the frequencies that we choose to hold, because we can't control what's outside of us. We can't control other people, but what we can control is that inner resonance. But that inner resonance is also going to determine what you perceive and experience in the world. So that's why they always keep sending us back to work with frequency, what's going on internally, what frequencies, what vibrations are you holding? And, they say when you can do this and you begin to repeat this over and over and over, you can radically shift your reality. And it happens very quickly because when you're paying attention to where you're vibrating, you're not going to create high drama. They always say drama happens to get your attention.
Yeah.
So if we're already paying attention to where we're vibrating and what's showing up for us, then life is a lot smoother. We'll still experience things that show us that lower resonance in our field, but it's not at the intensity of some of that high drama.
It's powerful stuff, Wendy, and I mean it becomes very interesting when we look at the collective, and how that starts to play, because we're kind of talking on a personal level now. I don't know if that would be enough. I don't know if you want to speak to that, or whether that would be a good place to kind of bring the P's in and speak more to the kind of collectively how we hold our frequency when perhaps things are happening in the collective that are kind of setting us off.
Yeah, I'm happy to
Or
do it
high
either way. So,
drama in the collective.
well, we certainly have that now. So why
Yeah,
don't I bring the guides in to talk about that? That's no problem whatsoever.
amazing.
Ah, yes. Hello, dears. This is the Ninth Dimensional Pleiadian Collective, and it is a pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity to connect with you. So, you're asking about the collective reality and the power that you have in shaping that reality. And you have a lot more power than you think you have for two reasons. One, the frequencies that you hold will determine what you experience as a reflection of reality. So if you hold the thought that people are kind, that people are generous, what you're going to see are people who are exhibiting those acts of kindness and care and compassion. If you think people are sneaky and they're greedy, then you're going to get reflections that reinforce that perspective of reality. So that's one way that the collective will be of service to you as you are holding and emanating frequency. Now, the other way that you have power in the collective is as enough of you begin to hold a higher resonance, it helps the collective to rise very rapidly. You are putting the information into the energetic field, and the guides are then able to, or then people are then able to access those how-to manuals, if you will, as a guide for them to access that within their own lives. How do they walk that path? So it doesn't take the majority of you to hold that resonance to shift the energy for the collective and create a different reality. But what it takes is a very small number of you to actually hold a higher resonance to find that the collective very, very quickly can lift its frequency. And that's important to remember, because some of you can start to feel a little hopeless. You say, oh, peace, things aren't changing. Look what's happening in the world. And, here I am trying to hold my resonance. But what good is that doing? It's doing a lot of good. Do not underestimate the power that one person has to create radical change. Even you holding a higher resonance and a smile as you walk down the street can have a massive impact on those that are just passing you by. Your smile may help someone to remember their light, their true divine nature. It may lift their spirits a bit. And all they needed was that gentle reminder. Or they may feel and sense in your energetic field as you're passing them by a frequency that they'd forgotten about. Oh, happiness, joy, creativity. I forgot about those things. Yes, I want more of that. And then they can reorganize their own energetic field to be in alignment with that. It's a bit like someone asking you to sing a note. And if you don't have perfect pitch, it can be very difficult. So if someone asks you to sing the note of C, you say, well, I'm not really sure. I can find that. But if someone plays the note on the piano and you say, okay, I've got a reference for it, no problem. Now you can reproduce it. And that's what we're talking about, that information is made available. There's a reference point that you can more easily attune yourself to.
Thank you so much. It's so interesting because I prepared kind of lots of questions for you, and now I find myself just going down a completely different tangent, just following my heart. So I'm going to go with that. So, what's coming up for me? When you're speaking about holding that resonance, holding your frequency high, and then observing that in the outer world, I've recently moved to Glastonbury, and Glastonbury is such a curious and interesting place because the world is a mirror, but it seems to be even more pronounced in Glastonbury. And sometimes you can walk into town and everybody's smiling, and you go to the Magdalen Chapel and the tour, and there's just this kind of beautiful flow. And then sometimes I go into Glastonbury and there are some sort of troublesome aspects of Glastonbury. And it can be quite ungrounding at times. So I'm just utilizing that personal experience because I don't want to necessarily be pushing away, when I see very troubled people, ungrounded people, and I don't want to be in judgment in relation to that. So using that experience, how would you navigate that kind of experiences?
So, one, you're in a very special place, a nexus point for energy and ley lines. And energy is very quickly manifest and amplified in these locations. You've got your sacred spots around the globe where this happens. And that's why those sacred spots exist where they are, because it's utilizing Earth's natural current of energy to amplify. And in the past, there have been typically more positive things placed on those locations. Not always. There's some darker abuse of some of those locations, not for the benefit of the collective, but for the few. And this is why you will find that the energy can shift pretty quickly. It's what's happening on with the collective. So when you notice that, one, the fact that you notice that it feels different is a success. And we want you to really honor that, to say, I now have a reference for what that subtle energy feels like. And that will help you so that you can more readily begin to read subtle energy, but also it helps you to understand what the absence of light feels like so that you recognize when you yourself are in it, and when you drop out and aren't in it, you recognize it faster. And this is something that we want to say here very briefly for all of you. We're talking about coming back and putting yourself in a higher resonance. None of you are going to stay there. And we don't want you to beat yourselves up when you fall out. It's a natural process. You will go up, you'll fall out. You'll go up, you'll fall out. And that reason is because you are moving to higher resonances, but you've still got the lower energy running in your field. You've got judgments, and those will begin to vibrate and you'll drop out. And this will help you as you then go through a process of integration to strengthen your ability to stay in a higher resonance for longer, and hopefully every time go up higher. And when you do drop out, hopefully you don't go as far and you don't stay there as long, because you begin to recognize, oh, I've dropped out of that higher frequency. This is a game of mastery, and mastery requires repetition. So you repeat it over and over and over again until you are very confident and aware of where you're vibrating in every given moment. So when you come across people who are in a lower resonance, hold a high one for them. Hold a vision for them of altering their own energetic field when they're ready, when it's appropriate for them. Hold compassion for them. Hold appreciation for their journey. If they're going through something that is very hard, very challenging, have gratitude for the fact that they're walking that path and putting that knowledge and that wisdom of the vibrational experience into the collective that you can then access, so that you don't have to embody that yourself and walk down that path. You can learn vicariously through the information that they are putting into the collective records. And you don't have to change anyone. You don't have to fix anyone. They're having their own unique vibrational experience that's adding to the whole. They have their own path, the own things that they want to experience. Higher is not any better than lower. They're just different vibrational expressions. And there are different things that the soul wants to venture forth and experience. That's it. So don't judge it as being wrong because somebody's vibrating at a lower space. Oftentimes you all do that because you think that if they're not vibrating at a higher resonance, that you are damned to experience their low vibrational experience with them. Oh, they're going to add to the collective trauma and drama, and I'm going to have to deal with the trauma and drama. Only if you align your frequency with it. Because as we said earlier, if you can sustain your resonance and keep coming back to that higher energy, you're going to perceive different things in the world, and you can help transform the world through your own resonance. And what you'll find is that as you maintain your frequency, other people will either be in a lower resonance and come up to match that as you sustain it, or they're going to go in a different direction because they're not a vibrational match. And being called and asked to raise in frequency means that they've got to deal with their stuff. It doesn't feel good. And so they'll go in another direction. All right. So it's very simple. All roads lead back to the internal and working with your frequency. Does that help, dear?
That is extremely helpful. Thank you so much. And it's very helpful because in Glastonbury, for example, when I come across say a group of drug addicts, for example, because I'm sensitive to energy, it kind of feels like it knocks me out a little bit. And it's interesting for me what you've said, because what you've said aligns with what I do in my therapy work, which is to hold that higher vision of not how the person presents to me as they come in, but how, seeing them as a divine being connected to source. So the next question I have is, how does releasing judgment help us all to return to source?
All right. So we want to go back here and just point this out for you. You're talking about having encounters with these beings and you feel like you're knocked out of your resonance. That's the gift for you. They're there to be a mirror and to be of service for you. It's helping you to learn how to hold your resonance and
Yeah.
not be knocked out, to allow others to be exactly where they are and for you to hold your center. But what you will also want to take a look at is, when somebody is in that space with any sort of addiction, whether it's sugar or drugs or pornography or shopping or television, there is a desire to numb, to not feel. So you can also go ask yourself, where am I numbing? Where am I not wanting to feel? Not to the extreme where these people have gone, but maybe in a mild way. Maybe you're avoiding looking at something or doing something. Maybe because it's challenging, maybe because it feels a little bit uncomfortable. Right. Again, not to the extreme that some of these people are taking that same frequency, but we would say chances are pretty good that you're running that same energy in a mild way. So, as you are going through this process of integration, as you're letting go of judgment, remember what we said when you judge something, or what Wendy said, you're pushing half source energy away. So, what you want to do is to be in acceptance. It doesn't mean that you want to lend your energy to that frequency. It may be something that's not a frequency that you want to condone, but you're not lending your energy to it. But it's a valid exploration of frequency. And by doing that, you allow the full force of source energy to flow. You become a living example of what the release of judgment looks like. So that's how, as you go through this process of integration, you can help other people just by being you, being the living example.
Thank you so much. And what I acknowledge in myself is, so for example, if I went into the White Spring, kind of firstly, an expectation for a sacred experience. So that's the first thing, is like not having that expectation. And say, for example, there was a group of drug kind of vibe in there, that makes me feel then in a cave-like space in that environment, makes me feel very much out of my comfort zone. So the question that I have, I'm at that point stepping into kind of old fear-based conditioning. When that shows up, how can we reframe this? So holding that vision, but also reframing that kind of fear-based, I'm out of my comfort zone here. So
Yes.
it's acknowledging what's happening for me internally in that moment.
All right. So several things. So one, It's always interesting to us how you will classify some things as being sacred experiences or sacred locations and others as not. To us, all creation, all experiences, all of the planet is sacred. All right. So that's important for you all to note that absolutely everything that you do is sacred. And having that shift in perspective can really help support you all. Even the negative can be a sacred experience because it can wake you up to see that there's more light. Every experience that you have shows you how you are expressing or suppressing your divine light. If you're having a challenge, you've suppressed divine light. And no, because you're living in a dualistic universe, you create a challenge and a solution at the same time. They're just in different vibrational ranges. One shows you the suppression of light, the suppression of divine source energy. The other is the expression of it. So, depending on where your consciousness is, you will be in alignment with the suppression energy or the expression energy. They're all sacred. So, if you find yourself fearful and triggered, it depends on the situation and it depends on where you are. If you can deal with it in the moment, or it might be something that you have to deal with later in the day. You may be at the office and you might find that all this stuff starts coming up while you're having a conversation with your boss. Probably not the appropriate moment for you to be able to do all of that deep processing that needs to happen. So in that moment, if you don't have the space, we would say simply take a nice deep cleansing breath and then imagine your heart opening. That doesn't always feel easy when you're in the midst of a fearful moment. But if you can think of something that makes you smile, that's the fastest way to get back to the heart center. And that's the fastest way to become present. If you're in the heart center, you're present. If you're present, you're in the heart center. We usually recommend thinking of a baby animal or a place in nature that you like. Probably not your own pet, because your pet may have chewed on your favorite shoes and there may be some subconscious programs going on, or if you think of a loved one, there may be some subconscious beliefs there. So that's why we always say maybe just in general, a baby animal or a place. And you can create a profile for yourselves and a folder and put that in your phone. You all have your phones with you. And when you need it, you can go and reference it if you can't think of it. Oftentimes, when you're vibrating at a lower rate and you need your tools, it can be very hard to remember what tools you have. So you can create a list that says, here are the tools that I know that I have. So when you have the time to actually unpack that experience, why was I fearful? What was coming up? The first thing that you want to do is give yourself permission to feel. Because when you step into one of those situations and fear comes up or a negative feeling comes up, most of you don't like it and you want to stuff it right back down. So you have to allow that energy to complete its journey. And the way that you do that is just to simply observe what's sitting in your body. So as you sit and breathe, you want to just take note of what energy is there. Is your energetic field expanded or does it feel close to your body? The physical body, is it tense? Is it relaxed? Is there any ache or pain? Is it hot? Is it cold? All right. Take assessment in this way. And then with your energetic field, we started there. But is there any color that you see? All right. Is your field jagged or smooth? Are there holes? Is it patchy? Is it smooth? Just notice without any judgment. And then what emotion comes up? Panic, anxiety, loathing. And then what's happening with the mind? What's the quality of thought? Is the mind active? Is it quiet? Is it positive? Is it negative? And just observe without judgment. The longest that most of you can hold on to this energy is about 45 seconds. And if you're holding on to it longer, you're typically getting caught in the story of it. You're reliving, you're replaying something, or you're trying to project to another now moment in the future to control and manipulate to avoid having that experience again. But as you just stay with it and observe, that energy can then move and leave the body, complete its journey. And this is how you all release and transform your energetic field. The amazing thing about this is if the energy that you're feeling is perhaps loathing, maybe there's something that you have to do and you have a loathing sensation about it. Every other instance in your life where you've had that vibrational expression and you've suppressed it, when you give yourself permission to just observe it and allow it to flow again, it's like opening a gateway, a doorway, that frequency, every experience of that can then be released. It's not just releasing what happened today, it's every experience that you suppressed of that frequency. So it's quite powerful. And then once you've kind of emptied and cleared that out, and you might have to do several rounds of this if this is really intense for you, then you want to choose what to replace it with. What do you want to feel instead? And then imagine what that sensation would feel like. To say I am this thing can be very difficult sometimes for you all, the I am statement, because you might be able to hold it for a second or two, and then the inner critic gets busy and starts saying, yeah, we're not this thing. But if you say, I wonder what it would feel like to be this thing, the ego isn't triggered in the same way. It isn't threatened. And you can put yourself in alignment and express that frequency. So both of those things are going to allow you to express that energy. And it doesn't matter to the process of creation which way you are able to attain and emanate that frequency. You're emanating it. And so that will be reflected back as your reality. We want to say one other thing here, because it seems to be a big problem for you all in terms of not seeing what you want manifest. Sometimes what you ask for is of a very high vibrational nature, and you're not able to sustain that frequency. And so what you get are the challenge energies, because your resonance is in a vibrational state that is a match for that energy. So pay attention to what is showing up, because that's exactly what you are supposed to be integrating. Sometimes the universe brings you what you need in order to elevate your frequency to get what you want. So the now moment is the most important moment, and pay attention to what is happening in the now, because that's what affords you the opportunity to up level. All right.
Thank you so much. That is incredibly helpful. Acknowledging being present in the now moment, and working through and sitting with all that stuff, and ultimately coming back to our hearts. So that really moves very nicely into some questions about manifestation, in terms of when we're looking at kind of dreaming a new dream for the collective, really, and a dream that's rooted in love rather than fear. What comes in is, if time doesn't exist, are those dreams already existing in this now moment?
Yes, they are. So let's talk a little bit about time. Time is an illusion. It is a marker for frequency. And in the higher dimensional ranges, we don't experience time the way that you do. You, because you're in a lower vibrational range, needed a construct for this dimension to afford you the opportunity to alter your resonance before you manifest something of a lower vibrational nature. So if you started having all of these thoughts of, I don't want to be here, and I hate it here, you'd constantly be going through the death cycle, and that wouldn't serve your soul growth. So time affords you the opportunity to alter your resonance, so that when that frequency is manifest of a lower vibrational nature, you're not in alignment, and so you're not experiencing that. And every now moment is built upon an agreed upon set of circumstances for the collective. Here are the stories that the collective says, this is the past, this is what's happened. We've had World War I, we've had World War II. And then you've got your personal stories. So if you can envision a triangle, and a little triangle inside the little triangle is your personal story. And these are the things that you say, this happened to me when I was 5, 15, 25. All the stories that you're holding, that creates a base frequency from which you create your reality. That is your now moment. That's the base frequency for it. Now, if you can imagine a giant sphere, and on the top of the sphere are infinite dots, and every dot is a now moment. Now, now moments on one side of the sphere are pretty close in resonance. All right. So that means that the collective version of reality and your personal stories in all those dots are pretty close. If you go to the other side of the sphere, it can be radically different. So, what will happen is that you will move from now moment to now moment to now moment with your consciousness. And occasionally you will go to a radically different experience. This is what most of you will call a miracle. So you will see this sometimes with people who've gone through a near-death experience, or they've had an illness, they've crossed to the other side, and they come back. Their way of thinking, their way of being is radically different. Their base frequency is different. And the body will realign to that new frequency because the body is generated out of the energetic template. You've changed the way you think, the way you feel. And the body can go into remission. All right, or the life trajectory will change dramatically when someone radically alters their perspective of reality. Now you will string all of these now moments together and give yourself the illusion of a timeline. And today, many times you will talk about multiple timelines and timeline splitting, and in truth, all of those realities are available to you. And you will put yourself on the one in which you can be of the greatest service and have the greatest soul growth, always. So most of you will make tiny little incremental shifts and movements from now moment to now moment. Occasionally, you'll have a shift, an epiphany, an experience that will knock you a little farther along the road to a different personal story. You'll release something, you'll release your judgment, your criticism about something, and that will alter and put you on something a little farther away than the previous moment. All right. But you are going to have exactly the experience that you are meant to have. If you are on a now moment where the collective is choosing something that is very hard, very difficult, that does not mean that you yourself are damned to have a negative experience because that's what the collective wants. Remember, you are going to put yourself on a now moment where you are able to be of the greatest service and have the greatest soul growth. So you may put yourself in that position so that you can be the living example of what is possible. You can have joy and expansion and upliftment on a now moment where the collective is experiencing something a little more challenging. And it may be that you are there to be the light. It may be that there's some little cleanup, if you will, that you're doing from other lifetimes where there's some lessons that didn't get integrated, some judgments that you've been dragging around. But you can, no matter what is going on with the collective, experience a higher level of awareness and a higher, more joyful life by the frequencies that you hold. Does that help answer your question,
Thank you
dear?
so much. So, if looking at the collective, if humanity collectively, or as star seeds and way showers, many of us started to dream in a new dream rooted in love rather than fear, what might the earth look like in the next 20 years, say, or in the next decades, just to support that visualization process for us all? And also, how can we really support that manifestation process?
So it is important that you focus on frequency over form, because what you're going to be creating for yourselves isn't going to look like anything you've created before. And if you keep going to the old to look for it, you're going to have a very hard time in the process of manifestation. So, what frequencies do you want to build this new reality with? So, you mentioned love, but there's more there. Maybe there's cooperation, there's creative expression, artistry, hope, um, support. There may be all kinds of frequencies that you want to envision and infuse in there. Now, as you're holding that vision for the collective, you've also got to do the work on yourself so that you yourself can embody those frequencies. Where are you not being of support to you? Maybe you are somebody who's an overgiver and you're not taking time to fill your cup. So maybe it's great communication that you want in the future. Are you really good at expressing yourself? Maybe that's a skill you need to develop within yourself. So always, whatever you want to hold for the collective, you've got to do that inner work so that you can stand in those frequencies yourselves. That is what will help to change the collective to be able to express those frequencies in a broader way. So where we see you headed over time will be to build communities where you all can be more creatively expressive, doing the things that allow you to experience passion and joy. You're not working to live, to put a roof over your head or to have money to pay for food. You're working because it is something that brings you joy and it's a contribution that you want to make to the whole. That's a vastly different way for you in terms of how you want to work. And learning to create in ways that are in better harmony with nature. The universe has its own geometric patterns that unfold. And when you start to recognize these, when you start to build your homes, when you start to structure all that you create in frequencies that are a matching resonance. We'll just take music, for example. Your music has been altered so that the base frequency is 440 when 432 is a more harmonious frequency alignment. So when you start to realign things with that more harmonious way of being, it opens all of you up and you become far more creative, and then you can see the natural patterns. So you will work in a way, and eventually you'll get to a space where it's unconditional. There is an unconditional exchange of energy. It's probably going to be about 70 years until you get to that level where humanity will give up money and the need for barter. Barter is the same as money. It's a conditional exchange. I'll give you this for that. But you'll get to a place where you will just be sharing and creative, and you'll know that whatever you need will be provided because somebody else is creating and wants to share that. And it's a very different, radical way of being. And it will take you a little time to alter your perception and kind of the structures. And you're going to figure it out, what structures work for the collective, what institutions will help you all to sustain this new energy and to help build towards that in the future. There'll be some trials, some error, some things that will need some tweaking, but you will certainly get there.
Thank you so much for all the guidance and wisdom that you've given today. Just so immensely, immensely grateful. Just one final question. What message of encouragement would you offer to those listening today who may feel overwhelmed by today's challenges?
So break it down into smaller pieces. All right. Bring it back to your own personal energy in this moment. How do you want to vibrate in this moment? Don't get 20 steps ahead of yourselves. And that will help you out immensely. The other thing we want you to know is that you are far more powerful than you give yourselves credit for. If you can decide the frequencies that you want to embody instead of reacting, and frankly, there are control mechanisms on your planet that are trying to elicit specific frequencies from you as you observe the stories of what's transpiring in the external world. There are lots of amazing, wonderful, positive things in the world that are going on, but you don't hear about those, not in your mainstream or alternative news. Both of those things are more negatively slanted. And so that's what most of you are receiving energetically as you attune with that. So we want you to be the broadcaster and to choose those resonances instead of a default frequency that is being kind of sold to you. And when you do that, you can experience greater highs, and it doesn't take a lot of time. You'll find that your reality can radically shift, the way that you feel, the way the body responds. Your health and well-being can change very quickly when you start aligning with more positive information, uplifting, life-affirming information, instead of getting locked into the negative story. That will help you. It's not that you're putting your head in the sand. Yes, the collective may be having a challenging time, but in this moment, you may choose something different. Remember, you're here to be a way shower, so choose a new way. All right. If you'd like, we would like to present you with an activation to help you to open to more empowerment and more creative flow.
Thank you
Would
so
that be all
much.
right?
Thank you.
So, we're going to do an activation. It's the language of light. And the language of light, if you don't know what it is a source language. It's comprised of light, sound, sacred geometry, and information. And it speaks directly to you, the divine being of light, having this physical experience. So it bypasses the traditional language centers of the brain, and it helps you to attune your energy. So it is presenting you with that example of a frequency, and you say, oh, this one, just like the note on the piano, and you can reattune your energetic field more easily to it. So that's what it does. And there are many galactic beings who show up to be of service in the transmission, because as they are blending their energies together, they are putting the information of how they've walked the path that you're currently on. And it's like somebody giving you a how-to manual. All right, it makes it much, much easier. So you may notice that the frequency will alter as the activation goes on. So this is meant to help support you with empowerment and creative flow. All right, nothing you need to know or do. Just take a nice deep breath. Ish ora biri kata biri jukidi ita ar biri jukata patakata ar mana kata ar biri jukata hata ora imini biri jukata ar biri jukata hata na kodo ora imana mata kata ara isa na kodo biri jukata patakata hata kur biri jukati ita ta ar biri jukata patakata anda akur mana kata ish kata ora makatoi ha ora imana katana ala kotore imash kata ipa kata kara lama kata biri jukata patakata hasa ar biri jukata patakati kita ar biri jukata patakata hata kati biri jukata. Take a nice deep breath. إذا تتأر بربيجو كتا بتكتي بريجو تتأر بريجو كتا أتوكتا من بريجي تتأر من بريجي تتأندري إبرا بدوري من بريجو كتا تدوي بريجو كتي تتأن بوري من بريجو كتا أوري من بريجو كتا إيرا أر أوري من بريجي تتي إن كتا بريجو كتا بتكتي بريجو كتا تتوري بريجو كتي هتا أكراي. All right, take another nice deep breath. So you can imagine coming back to this now moment as the frequencies are now recorded in your energetic field, as every experience that you have is recorded. You can imagine connecting with it, and that will help you open to the energy, or you can come back and listen to the actual activation again in the recording. So typically we recommend 3 times a day for 3 days in a row, because that gives you a good amount of time to become familiar with the subtle energies. But it's not a hard and fast rule. It's just one that we think can support you. But we want to leave you here with this thought, and that's to know that there is a tremendous amount of support for you on the other side. There are many, many beings who are here to be of service, your own angelic guides, your own celestial families, beings from other lifetimes who have been through incarnations with you, who are here and present to help you in any and every way that they possibly can. All you have to do is ask and listen. Put yourself in your heart center. All right, that's the gateway to accessing higher dimensional information. You can call on us directly. You don't need Wendy. And until we hear from you, we are around, we are watching, we are waiting, and we are sending many, many well wishes. So there are
Wow.
the bees.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. And to experience that firsthand, because obviously I've listened to the piece speaking, but it's very different when you're actually experiencing it. And I can really feel that transmission and that healing. I feel like I've been through a healing process with that. So thank you. I feel immensely grateful. I wasn't expecting that. So thank you.
Oh, that's amazing.
Is is there anything that you would like to share, Wendy, before finishing off today? Any last comments?
Well, one, I just want to encourage everybody to make sure they drink plenty of water
I
because
might
it
grab
is,
some right now.
yeah, it is a healing process as we do this work, especially when we do work with the language of light, and the water is going to help to kind of move fresh energy in and flush out anything that doesn't belong there. And we actually burn through a lot of minerals when we do higher vibrational work. So just kind of a reminder for that. It really is just a joy for me to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you.
And how can people find you, Wendy? Anyone that's not familiar with your work? I'll put your
Uh,
links underneath.
yes, so you can find me over at higherfrequencies.net. We have all different kinds of things going on there, more work with the language of light and programs. And then in person, I'm going to be out in West Virginia, in Princeton, West Virginia, November 14th through the 16th. So people can watch that online as well if they can't make the trip. So there's more information on our website
Do
on
you
that
ever
as
come to
well.
Europe?
It's been a while.
Oh, we
I
might have to encourage you to come to Glastonbury or somewhere.
It's beautiful there. Yeah, it's been many years. I used to do a lot of channeling in Europe, but yeah, it's been a while. I didn't travel for a very long time.
Well, thank you so much. So immensely grateful. And it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today, Wednesday. And thank you, everyone, for listening as well.
Thank you so much. I
Bye for
appreciate it. Be
now.
well.